Hey guys, tonight we begin with a creature so strange, so overconfident, and so completely soaked in other people's money that historians still argue about whether it was fully real. The 1990s tech millionaire. Forget the sensible tycoons of old, the ones who built railroads or dug for oil. This is a person who became wealthier than entire countries by promising that one day, eventually possibly, a website would turn a profit. They wore sandals to serious meetings, they kept a scooter in the hallway, and they believed with the calm certainty of a man who has never once been told no, that they were changing the world, one slightly broken web page at a time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And a warm, sincere thank you to the listener who suggested tonight's topic. Your ideas are the quiet engine that keeps this whole channel running, and I appreciate every single one of them. If you would rather drift off with your eyes closed, we're also on Spotify now, and you can find the link waiting patiently in the description. And for those who want a little more, there is a members area with a separate standalone 8-hour ad-free video, perfect for the nights when a single story simply is not long enough. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft background hum, get comfortable, and let yourself sink in. Let us wonder together for a moment. What did it actually feel like to be wildly rich and completely clueless at the exact same time? Did these people know their fortunes were made of fairy dust and stock options? Did anyone ever read the business plan? Could you have survived one single day drowning in venture capital, foosball tables, and free artisanal snacks without accidentally spending $19 million on a sock puppet? And now, congratulations. You have just woken up in 1999 in a waterbed roughly the size of a public swimming pool, inside a mansion you bought last Tuesday with money that does not technically exist yet. Your pager is buzzing, your Porsche is blocking someone's driveway, and your company, which has never earned a single cent, is somehow worth more than a major airline. Good luck. Let us start where every glorious day begins, with waking up. Except you do not wake up in a normal bedroom, because normal is for people who have not recently appeared on the cover of a magazine. You wake up in a mansion so large it practically has its own weather system, and at least 3 rooms you have never actually entered. You bought it 6 weeks ago, fully furnished, because touring it twice felt like a waste of a busy man's time. The bed is enormous, imported, and vibrates for reasons no one has ever explained to you. Sunlight pours in through windows the size of billboards. And somewhere far downstairs a phone is ringing, almost certainly a banker who desperately wants to give you more money you do not need. You lie there for a moment, listening to the house breathe. It makes sounds a home should not make. Somewhere a fountain trickles. Somewhere else a very expensive espresso machine is warming itself up without being asked. Like a loyal but slightly menacing pet. The sheets against your skin are so soft they feel almost illegal, spun from a fabric your decorator described using words you did not understand and were too proud to question. You paid for all of it. You're almost certain you paid for all of it. Getting out of bed is its own small expedition. The mattress is the size of a modest apartment, so reaching the edge takes genuine commitment. A slow crawl across a landscape of pillows you will never use, arranged by someone whose entire job is arranging pillows. Your bare feet hit the floor and the floor is warm, because you installed heating beneath it, because a man of your importance cannot be expected to endure a cool tile. It is a level of comfort so complete that it loops back around into faint unease. You shuffle toward the bathroom, which is roughly the size of the home you grew up in. The mirror is enormous and unflattering in high definition, showing you every consequence of the launch party you attended 2 nights ago and the one before that. There is a shower with 16 different settings and a control panel that would not look out of place on a submarine. You press a button. Cold water erupts from an unexpected direction. You press another. Now it is raining sideways. Somewhere in this machine is the temperature you actually want, and one day, with patience and luck, you may find it. This is the strange comedy of sudden wealth. You have everything, and you cannot work half of it. You own a home with a name, a home with staff, a home with a wine cellar full of bottles you will never open because you're secretly afraid of choosing wrong. 2 years ago, you shared a cramped apartment and celebrated when the heating worked. Now you stand in a marble palace, dripping, having just been ambushed by your own plumbing, wondering whether comfort is really the same thing as happiness, then deciding firmly that it must be, because the alternative is far too much to think about before breakfast. You wrap yourself in a robe heavier than a winter coat, embroidered with initials that are, reassuringly, your own. The phone downstairs is still ringing. It has been ringing this whole time. You let it ring. You're rich now, and one of the quiet privileges of being rich is deciding, at least for a moment, that the world can wait. But first, before anything else, before the money and the meetings and the madness, there is the one place that truly reveals what all this wealth has done to you, the garage. Now it is time to face your proudest achievement and your deepest shame at once, the garage. Because when you become rich overnight, the very first instinct buried somewhere between the lizard brain and the wallet is to buy cars. Not one car, not two, but a small gleaming fleet, arranged like a museum exhibit dedicated to poor impulse control. There is the Porsche you drive. There is the second Porsche you drive when the first Porsche is being cleaned. There is a vintage something you cannot start and are frankly a little afraid of. You do not know how to change a tyre. You have never once checked the oil. You privately suspect one of these vehicles may be haunted, but they look tremendous, and looking tremendous is the entire point. The garage itself is a cathedral. The floor is polished to a shine so bright you can see your own bewildered reflection staring back up at you. The lighting is soft and reverent, the kind of lighting a museum uses on a priceless painting. Except here it falls on a car you've driven exactly 4 times. The air smells of leather, fresh wax and money, a scent no candle company has yet managed to bottle, though you would absolutely buy it if they did. You walk the row slowly, the way a general reviews his troops. Here is the silver one, here is the red one, here is the one you bought at 2 a.m. after a very persuasive conversation with a salesman who understood exactly what kind of night you were having. You cannot remember its top speed. You have never come close to its top speed. In your daily life, you drive 12 minutes across town at a pace that would embarrass a golf cart. But knowing the car could, in theory, launch you toward the horizon like a rocket brings you a comfort that is difficult to explain and impossible to justify. The truth, the thing you would never say aloud, is that you are slightly intimidated by your own garage. The vintage one requires a special starting procedure involving a sequence of steps you have never fully memorized, so it simply sits there, gleaming and judgmental. A beautiful machine you own the way a nervous person owns a very large dog. One of the sports cars has a manual transmission, which you cannot drive, which means you paid a staggering sum for a vehicle you can admire but not operate. You tell people it is an investment. You tell yourself the same thing quietly on the mornings you cannot quite meet its headlights. Modern comparisons fail here, but you try anyway. Owning these cars is a little like collecting stamps, if each stamp cost as much as a house and screamed down the freeway at absurd speeds. It is like buying a library full of books in a language you cannot read, purely for the way the spines look on the shelf. You're not a driver, you're a curator, tending a collection whose main purpose is to exist, to be photographed, and to reassure you that yes, all of this is really happening, that the boy who once saved for a used sedan now cannot decide which of his sports cars to ignore today. You choose the silver Porsche because it is closest to the door and because you know how to start it, which narrows the field considerably. The engine wakes with a growl that is genuinely thrilling for about 4 seconds before you remember you are simply going to work. The garage door rises. Daylight pours in across all that gleaming metal, this small kingdom of things you cannot fully use. And as you pull out into the ordinary world, you realize you still have to get dressed, which in your world is its own peculiar adventure. Time to get dressed, which in your world means something genuinely revolutionary, giving up completely. The 1990s tech millionaire pioneered a bold new look, best described as toddler on a hiking trip. Cargo shorts with enough pockets to hide a filing cabinet, a fleece vest worn indoors in summer purely for reasons of identity. Sandals, possibly over socks, absolutely without shame. A faded t-shirt from a conference you attended once and remember nothing about. This is not laziness, you insist. This is a statement. And the statement is that you are so important, so busy, so cosmically valuable that you cannot be bothered to own a belt. Astonishingly, everyone around you nods along in complete agreement. Your closet is enormous, a walk-in space larger than most bedrooms, lined with rails of clothing you never touch. There are suits in there, beautiful ones, tailored by a man who flew in specially to measure you. They hang in the dark, plastic-wrapped, mourning the meetings you will attend in a hoodie instead. Somewhere in this closet is a tie. You know it is in there. You have never found it, and you have never truly looked. Getting dressed takes you about 90 seconds, which is roughly 90 seconds longer than you would prefer. You pull on the cargo shorts, whose pockets currently contain a granola bar, a tangled cord that connects to nothing, a business card belonging to someone you cannot recall, and a small mysterious screw you're certain came from something important. The fleece vest goes over the t-shirt, a garment so central to your identity that you own the same one in 6 colours and refuse to explain why. You slide your feet into the sandals. The look is complete. You resemble a man who is either worth $400 million or is about to ask if he can borrow a phone charger, and in this decade, remarkably, those two men are frequently the same person. The genius of the outfit, the part you would defend in a court of law, is what it says without saying anything. A suit announces that you answer to someone. A suit is a uniform, a small daily surrender, a costume for people who must impress a boss. But you have no boss. You are the boss. You're so far beyond the need to impress anyone that you have circled all the way back to dressing like a man on his way to buy fishing bait. This is not the absence of power. This, you have decided, is the ultimate expression of it. Consider the meeting you have later with the bankers. Men in suits so crisp they could cut bread, cufflinks glinting, shoes polished to a mirror. They will sit across from you in their thousands of dollars of careful tailoring, and you will slouch in from the parking lot in shorts and sandals, and they will treat you like visiting royalty. Because the one wearing the fleece vest is the one holding the future, and everyone in the room knows it. The suits are dressed to be taken seriously. You are dressed to prove you do not have to try. Of course, there is a small flaw in the philosophy, one you notice on colder mornings when the sandals betray you and your toes go numb in the office air conditioning. There is a reason humans invented the belt, the sock, the sensible shoe, and you are quietly relearning each lesson the hard way. But you would sooner freeze than admit it. Comfort is the point. Rebellion is the point. Looking like you rolled directly out of bed and into a fortune is very much the point. Fully dressed now in the proud armour of a man who owns no iron, you head downstairs, because there is one more ritual to survive before the day can truly begin, and it is waiting for you in the kitchen, disguised as breakfast. Breakfast time, and here is where the money truly reveals what it does to a person. You have a personal chef now, a real one, trained somewhere impressive, who quietly weeps into the risotto, And yet, based on a book you half read on a flight, you have decided that food is basically a bug in the human operating system. So you sip a strange beige shake made of powders, sprouts, and a supplement that costs more per bottle than your first month of rent ever did. You have strong opinions about brain fuel now. You use the word optimize about a banana. Your chef could make you anything on earth, and you've asked once again for the sludge. The kitchen is a marvel, all gleaming steel and cold stone, the sort of kitchen that belongs in a restaurant with a waiting list. There are ovens you have never turned on. There is a rack of knives worth more than a car, arranged by a professional who takes their sharpness personally. The chef stands at the centre of it all, spatula in hand, an artist trapped in a gallery that only ever requests the same grey smoothie. This morning he watches you drink it with the expression of a violinist forced to play a doorbell. You, however, are convinced you have cracked the code. Somewhere in that half-read flight book was a chapter about efficiency, about the human body as a machine, about fuel rather than food, and it lodged in your brain like a splinter. Now you do not eat meals. You consume inputs. You have opinions about the timing of your inputs, the biochemistry of your inputs, the way your inputs interact with your sleep, which is already a disaster for entirely separate reasons. You speak about your own digestion the way you speak about your company, with total confidence and no evidence whatsoever. The shake itself defies description, though its colour lands somewhere between wet cardboard and a rainy afternoon. It contains a powder that promises focus, a powder that promises energy, and a third powder whose purpose no one, including you, can quite remember. Added simply because the bottle looked serious. It tastes like a lawn feels. You drink it standing up because sitting down to eat is a luxury for people with time, and you are far too important to sit despite having absolutely nowhere to be for another hour. There is a beautiful absurdity to it that you cannot see, but everyone around you can. You could eat anything. You have the means to summon any dish, any delicacy, any comfort the world has ever produced, delivered warm to a table overlooking your ridiculous garden. And you have chosen, freely and proudly, to drink a glass of expensive dust. It is a little like owning a concert hall and only ever using it to store boxes. The chef knows this. The chef has made peace with this mostly, in the way a person makes peace with a leaky roof. Occasionally, late at night, when the diet philosophy loosens its grip, you sneak into that magnificent kitchen and eat cold leftovers standing at the counter like a raccoon, and it is the happiest you feel all week. But those moments are secret. In the daylight, in front of others, you are a man of discipline, a visionary who has transcended the primitive need for flavour, sipping his sludge and feeling, briefly and incorrectly, superior to everyone who's enjoying their breakfast. You finish the shake. Your brain does not feel optimized. Your brain feels, if anything, faintly betrayed. But you set the glass down with the satisfaction of a job well done and grab your keys, because the day is calling, and you have a 12-minute drive ahead of you to a building that, technically and improbably, you own. Time to leave for work, which is a funny little phrase, because you own the work. You own the building the work happens inside of. You could cancel the entire day with one phone call, but instead you fold yourself into the Porsche and drive 12 minutes across town like an ordinary commuter who simply happens to be worth $200 million on paper. Traffic does not care about your net worth. The radio plays a song you will pretend not to know the words to. You practice looking visionary at red lights, and the whole way there, a small voice in the back of your head asks the same gentle question it asks every single morning. What exactly does this company do again? The car smells of leather and the faint chemical ghost of whatever the detailer sprays to make it smell that way. You ease out of your neighbourhood, past gates and hedges and homes belonging to people exactly like you, all of whom became rich last year doing things none of you can fully explain to your parents. The morning is bright. The road is smooth. And for all your imported horsepower, you sit at the same traffic lights as everyone else, drumming your fingers on a steering wheel worth more than a wedding. This is the great equalizer nobody warned you about. Money buys the mansion, the fleet, the sludge, the sandals, but it does not buy an empty road. A minivan cuts you off, driven by a tired parent who has no idea and would not care that the man they just annoyed could buy their entire street. You are forced to brake. You are forced to wait. You are forced, briefly, to be a normal person in a very abnormal car, and it grates on you in a way you would never admit out loud. So you do what you always do to feel important again. You reach for the brick, that heavy cell phone riding shotgun, and you make a call. It does not matter to whom. It rarely matters what about. The point is the call, the being on the phone, the visible busyness of a man too valuable to simply sit in traffic like a civilian. You say things like, circle back and touch base and let us take this offline. Phrases that mean almost nothing but sound expensive. The person on the other end is probably eating cereal. You are gesturing at the windshield as though closing a historic deal. The radio, meanwhile, plays a song you secretly adore and would rather die than be caught singing. You mouth a word or two at the red light, catch yourself, and rearrange your face into the expression you think a visionary should wear. Distant, thoughtful, slightly pained, like a man carrying the weight of the future on a Tuesday morning. In truth, you are thinking about the sludge which has not settled well, and about the meeting later which you have not prepared for, and about your rival, who was in the newspaper again looking smug. And there it is, unbidden, the question. What does the company actually do? You know the answer in the way you know a song you have not heard in years. The shape of it there, but the words gone. Something about connecting people. Something about the future. Something about a platform, an ecosystem, a revolution. You can pitch it flawlessly to a room full of investors, spin gold from the vaguest air, but here, alone, at a red light, honest for one unguarded second, you're not entirely sure. And that uncertainty is the true engine of this entire era, humming quietly beneath the confidence, the cash and the cars. The light turns green. You put the question away, where it lives, and you drive the last few minutes toward the strange and wonderful place where your fortune is supposedly being built. You're almost there. You can already see it rising ahead, and it is not an office. It is something far stranger. You arrive at the office, except it is not an office. It is a campus. A word that makes it sound educational rather than expensive. Somewhere in here, allegedly, work is happening. But first you must walk past the foosball table, the ping-pong table, the arcade machine, and a fully stocked kitchen of free artisanal snacks you personally approved during a very serious budget meeting. There are beanbags, there is a nap pod, there is a scooter someone rides between meetings, weaving past engineers who have not seen sunlight since the spring. It looks less like a business, and more like a summer camp for adults who somehow became responsible for other people's retirement savings. You push through the glass doors and the noise hits you first, a happy chaos of clacking foosball rods, distant arcade beeps, and the low electric hum of 100 computers all working very hard at something. The air smells of fresh coffee, warm bagels, and the faint plasticky newness of a building that did not exist 18 months ago. Everything is bright, primary coloured, aggressively fun, as though a corporation and a playground had a child and gave it a stock ticker. You wander through it like a benevolent king surveying his oddest kingdom. Here is the wall of free cereal, 40 kinds, dispensed from clear plastic towers, because someone somewhere read that letting employees pick their own cereal boosts morale, and you believed them, and you paid for it. Here is the espresso bar with an actual trained barista, because ordinary coffee is for ordinary companies. Here is the room full of beanbags where important decisions are meant to happen, but where more often people simply lie down and stare at the ceiling, quietly wondering what the company does. The perks are legendary, and you are proud of every ridiculous one. Free lunch, free dinner, free laundry, free massages on Thursdays, a game room, a music room no one can play, a slide, an actual slide, between 2 floors, installed at great expense because a competitor had one and you could not bear it. The logic which sounded airtight in the meeting is that if you keep your people happy and fed and entertained, they will never want to leave the building, and if they never leave the building, they will work forever. You have essentially built a very comfortable, very expensive trap, and the astonishing part is that people are lining up to be caught in it. It is a strange thing to walk through. You pass a foosball game so intense that 2 grown engineers are shouting, sweating, and possibly no longer friends. You pass the nap pod, a futuristic egg where a designer is either resting or hiding, it is impossible to say. You pass a meeting happening entirely on beanbags, 4 people sunk so low into the floor that they appear to be conducting business from a shared hole in the ground. And you think, with genuine warmth, that this is what winning looks like. This is the future of work. Ordinary offices have desks and rules. Yours has a smoothie station and a foosball rivalry that may end in tears. Somewhere beneath the fun, of course, there is actual talent. Brilliant people writing genuinely clever code, building things that may one day matter. But it is easy to forget them, tucked away behind the noise and the novelty, quietly carrying the whole enterprise on their shoulders while everyone else debates the cereal selection. You will remember to thank them eventually, probably. You make a mental note, which joins the vast graveyard of other mental notes. For now, you grab a bagel you'll not eat, nod to barista you'll never learn the name of, and head toward your desk, past all this glorious, catered, bean-bagged chaos. Because there is real work waiting today, or at least the technology that is supposed to be doing it, and that technology, you're about to be reminded, is held together with hope, patience, and a sound that will haunt your dreams. Now let us talk about the technology itself, the shimmering future you are selling to the world, which currently connects to that future at the speed of a very sleepy snail. To get online, you must summon the sacred sound, that unholy chorus of screeches, static and digital gargling that means the modem is trying its absolute best. It takes a full minute to connect. It takes another full minute to load a single image, which arrives one agonizing horizontal strip at a time, like a fax sent by a ghost. If anyone in the building picks up a telephone, the whole thing collapses, and this, you tell investors with a completely straight face, is going to replace shopping malls. You sit down at your desk, crack your knuckles, and begin the ritual. You click to connect. The modem clears its throat. And then comes the sound, that unmistakable symphony of a machine, apparently trying to communicate with the dead. First a dial tone, then a series of urgent beeps, then a long harsh hiss, then a burst of static so violent it sounds like 2 robots having an argument in a blender. It goes on for the better part of a minute, a full minute in which you can do nothing but wait and listen and quietly age. When it finally connects, a little triumphant chime rings out, and you feel the same rush of victory a mountaineer must feel reaching a summit. You're online, you're jacked into the future, and the future, it turns out, is going to make you wait some more. You click on a web page, one of your own, the crown jewel of your empire, and it begins to load the way honey pours in winter. The text appears first, blocky and grey. Then, slowly, a single image starts to render, one thin horizontal line at a time, top to bottom, so that for a solid 30 seconds you're staring at what appears to be a sunset, or possibly a golden retriever. It is genuinely impossible to tell until the whole thing finally arrives. The fragility of it all is almost sacred. The entire connection travels down the same phone line the building uses for actual phone calls, which means the internet and the telephone are locked in a bitter ancient rivalry, unable to coexist. If someone across the office picks up a receiver to order lunch, your connection dies instantly, without warning, without mercy, and you must begin the whole screeching ritual again from the start. You have sent memos about this. You have begged people not to touch the phones during important uploads. It has not helped. The betrayal always comes when you least expect it, and yet, and this is the truly magnificent part, you believe with your entire chest. You look at this sluggish, screeching, easily murdered connection, this technology that struggles to load a picture of a dog before lunchtime, and you see the future of all human commerce. You go into rooms full of serious men with checkbooks and you tell them, without a flicker of doubt, that one day people will do all their shopping through this. Their groceries, their furniture, their pet supplies, everything delivered through the magic of the screech. They lean forward, they nod. They believe it too, which is either a sign of collective madness or, unnervingly, a glimpse of something real. Because here is the secret joke of the whole decade. You are right. You are completely, absurdly right. Just far too early. Like a man showing up to a party a decade before it starts, insisting the music is about to be incredible. The future you are describing is coming. It simply cannot arrive at this speed, down this line, interrupted by every lunch order in the building. You're trying to run tomorrow on today's phone wire, and the wire is doing its noble, screeching best. You wait for the page to finish loading, the retriever, or the sunset, revealing itself at last. You lean back, satisfied, a pioneer at the edge of a frontier that mostly consists of waiting, and you reach for the other tools of your trade, the gadgets clipped and stuffed about your person, each one a small, heavy promise of a future that has not quite showed up yet. No self-respecting tech millionaire leaves home without gadgets, and yours are magnificent, heavy, and almost entirely useless. Your cell phone weighs about as much as a brick, and holds a charge for roughly the length of one confident phone call. Your pager buzzes constantly with numbers you do not recognize and will never call back. And clipped proudly to your belt, the crown jewel, a Palm Pilot, a tiny glowing tablet you write notes on with a plastic stick using a secret alphabet you had to learn like a wizard. You're carrying $500 of technology that, all combined, does slightly less than a paper notebook. But it beeps, and beeping is the sound of the future. Let us begin with the phone, if we can even call it that, since it more closely resembles a construction material. It is enormous, black, and topped with a stubby antenna you must pull out with your teeth if your hands are full. It fits in no pocket comfortably. It has left a permanent dent in the leather of every bag you own. When it rings, which is rarely, because almost no one has a phone to call you on, the whole thing rumbles like a small angry animal. You answer with great ceremony, standing up, walking somewhere visible, because a man on a mobile telephone in 1999 is a man to be reckoned with, and you want to be reckoned with badly. The battery, of course, is a cruel joke. Fully charged, it will give you perhaps one meaningful conversation before dying with no warning, going instantly and completely dark like a fainting Victorian. So you carry a spare battery, and a car charger, and a wall charger, and a general low-grade anxiety about power that follows you everywhere. You have ended important calls early simply to preserve battery for calls that never come. You have, more than once, held a dead brick to your ear in public and pretended to talk, purely for the image. You're not proud of this. You're not entirely ashamed of it either. Then there is the pager, clipped to your belt like a badge of honor, buzzing at all hours with a stream of numbers that mean nothing to you. Someone, somewhere, wants you to call them back. You never do. You cannot half the time, because you do not recognize the number and have no way to know if it is your assistant, an investor, a wrong number, or the pizza place confirming an order you forgot placing. But the buzzing makes you feel wanted, needed, essential. Each vibration is a tiny hit of importance, a little pulse that says the world requires you, even when the world is actually just a fax machine dialing you by mistake. And finally, the pride of the collection, the Palm Pilot. This one you genuinely love. It is a small dark tablet that fits in your palm, a personal digital assistant, a phrase you say with reverence. You keep your calendar on it. You keep your contacts on it. You take notes on it, using a plastic stick called a stylus, and a special simplified alphabet you actually had to sit down and learn, drawing each letter in a particular way so the machine can understand you. You spent real evenings practicing your letters like a child, a grown multimillionaire hunched over a gadget, learning to write all over again so a device the size of a coaster would recognize the word meeting. The grand irony, which everyone sees but you, is that all of this together, the brick, the pager, the glowing tablet with its wizard alphabet, accomplishes marginally less than a small paper notebook and a pen you could buy for pocket change. The notebook never runs out of battery. The notebook never dies mid-sentence. The notebook does not require you to learn a secret script. But the notebook does not beep, and it does not glow, and it does not announce to a crowded room that its owner lives at the razor edge of tomorrow. So you carry the gadgets, heavy and blinking and needy, because they are not really tools. They are jewellery for men who believe in the future. You pat your belt, reassured by the small arsenal of technology weighing you down, and turn your attention to the one document that supposedly holds this entire glittering operation together. Or rather, you turn your attention to the fact that no one can seem to find it. At some point, presumably, there was a plan, a real document, with pages describing how this company intends to actually make money. A concept everyone in the building refers to constantly and no one has ever seen. The plan lives in a drawer. The plan is a legend. When pressed, you explain that profit is not the point yet, that you are focused on growth, on eyeballs, on capturing the market, and other phrases that sound like strategy, but are mostly vibes wearing a suit. The truth, whispered only in the quiet hum of the server room, is far simpler. Get big, look important, and hope the money question politely sorts itself out later. It exists, you are fairly sure. There was a document early on, back when the company was 3 people and a very good feeling. Someone typed it. Someone printed it. It had projections in it, little graphs climbing hopefully upward, and a section near the back you think about revenue, a chapter everyone agreed to write later and no one ever did. That plan is now somewhere in the building, in a drawer, in a folder, possibly in a box that got moved during the expansion, a sacred text everyone cites and no one can produce. When investors ask about it, and they do ask, you have developed a beautiful and elaborate dance. You lean back. You steeple your fingers. You explain that in the old economy, yes, a company worried about small things like earning more than it spent, but this is the new economy, and the rules are different now. You talk about market share. You talk about first mover advantage. You talk about network effects, a phrase you love because it sounds scientific and cannot be checked. Profit, you assure them warmly, is a problem for successful companies, and you intend to become so successful that the problem solves itself. The genius of this argument, if you can call it genius, is that it works because everyone wants it to work. The investors do not want the plan either. The plan would contain numbers, and numbers are stubborn, and the numbers, if anyone read them, might suggest that a company spending $10 to make $1 is not, in the traditional sense, a good idea. So there is a quiet, unspoken agreement in every room. Nobody asks the hard question, because nobody wants to hear the honest answer, and the party continues, fueled by the shared and comforting decision not to look too closely. Inside the company, the whole thing runs on faith and momentum. Your engineers build, your marketers market. Your salespeople sell things at prices that lose money on every single transaction, cheerfully, because the plan, the legendary plan, is to make it up in volume, a phrase that has ended more companies than fire and flood combined. When a nervous new hire asks gently how exactly the business becomes profitable, they are met with the warm, glazed smiles of people who have learned not to think about it, and eventually they stop asking, and they too learn to love the growth. And growth is real. That is the maddening part. The numbers that go up do go up. More users, more traffic, more attention, more press, more parties, more everything. All of it climbing, 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 in a great intoxicating rush that feels exactly like success and costs exactly like a catastrophe. You're getting bigger every single day. You're simply getting bigger the way a balloon gets bigger, thrilling and swelling, and one sharp moment away from a very loud noise. But that is a worry for a colder morning, and this morning is warm and bright and full of momentum. You have a company that is growing, a story people love, and a plan you cannot find but can describe beautifully. All you need now is more money to keep the whole glorious machine running, and money, in this decade, is astonishingly easy to summon. You simply have to go and ask the right people, in the right room, with the right amount of confidence, and the right graph that goes up and to the right. Today you perform the ancient ritual of the pitch, in which you sit in a beautiful room full of men in expensive vests and convince them to hand you a truly obscene amount of cash. You do not bring proof, you bring energy. You say the word revolutionize until it loses all meaning. You draw a graph that goes up and to the right with no numbers on either side, because numbers are limiting. You call your website a platform, an ecosystem, a movement. And the astonishing part, the part that would make your grandparents faint, is that it works. They nod, they smile, they write you a check with more zeros than a phone number, and then they thank you for the opportunity. The room itself is designed to make ordinary people feel small, which is precisely why you swagger in wearing sandals. It sits high in a glass tower, with a view of the whole valley spread out below like a kingdom for sale. The table is a single slab of polished wood the size of a canoe. The chairs cost more than your first salary, and around that table sit the venture capitalists, tanned and calm and dangerous, men who became wealthy by being right just often enough, now hunting for the next impossible thing to be right about. You do not sit quietly. You perform. You stand at the front, you gesture at your graph, that beautiful ascending line unburdened by any actual figures, and you begin to build a world with your words. You describe a future so vivid, so inevitable, that the room can practically see it. You use the big words, the magic words, the ones that have launched 1,000 fortunes. Revolutionize, disrupt, platform, ecosystem, scale. You do not explain how the company makes money, because that is not the deal here. The deal is that you make them feel the future in their chests and let their imaginations fill in the boring parts. The trick, and it is a trick, though you would call it vision, is confidence. Total, seamless, unshakable confidence. You cannot flinch. You cannot hedge. If you show a flicker of doubt, they will smell it, the way a dog smells fear, and the spell will break. So you speak about your unproven company as though its success is a fact already written in history books, a done deal simply waiting for the world to catch up. You're not asking them for money. You're generously offering them a chance to be part of something enormous, and if they hesitate, well, your rival is pitching down the hall, and you let that hang in the air. And it works. It genuinely, absurdly works. Somewhere around the point where you describe the size of the market, a number so large it stops meaning anything, you see it happen behind their eyes, the shift from skepticism to hunger. They stop asking questions. They start nodding. One of them leans to another and murmurs something you cannot hear but can absolutely feel. The energy in the room tilts, and you know, with the certainty of a man who has done this before, that you have them. You have summoned money out of pure belief, conjured a fortune from a graph with no numbers on it. The check they write is staggering, a figure with so many zeros it looks less like a payment and more like a phone number, more money than your parents earned across their entire lives, handed to you for a company that has never made a cent, on the strength of a story and a fleece vest. They shake your hand warmly. They tell you they are thrilled to be on board. They thank you, actually thank you, for the privilege of setting their money on fire alongside yours. You walk out of that glass tower floating, invincible, a magician who has just pulled a fortune from an empty hat. The valley glitters below you. The future feels not just possible but owed to you. And now comes the truly dangerous part, the part you are best at, the part that will feel wonderful right up until it does not. You have to go and spend it. And spending, as it turns out, is where the real artistry begins. Now comes the truly special skill of the era. The thing you were practically born to do, spending money that was never really yours to begin with. They call it the burn rate, a cheerful little phrase for how fast you set investor cash on fire. You hire too many people. You buy office chairs that cost more than a used car and swivel like a dream. You throw money at advertising, at parties, at a lobby fish tank so grand it requires its own full-time employee. Every dollar that comes in goes racing straight back out again, faster and faster, and everyone around you swears this is healthy, this is normal, this is exactly what winning looks like on the way to the top. The phrase itself is telling. Burn rate. Not spending, not investment, but burning, the language of a bonfire, and yet everyone says it with a smile, as though setting money alight were a proud national sport. You have a burn rate the way other companies have a mission statement, and you quote it to investors like a badge. We are burning through $4 million a month, you announce, and instead of fainting, they nod approvingly, because a high burn rate means ambition, and ambition, this decade, is worth more than arithmetic. So you burn. You burn on office space you do not need. Whole floors leased and left half empty because leasing whole floors is what serious companies do. You burn on furniture, ergonomic chairs so advanced they come with instruction manuals, desks that rise and fall at the touch of a button, a lobby designed by an actual architect to impress visitors who mostly just want to use the bathroom. You burn on the fish tank, a vast glowing wall of tropical fish that serves no purpose whatsoever, except to say, wordlessly, that a company with this much money to waste must surely know something everyone else does not. You burn on people, hiring in a frenzy, filling the campus with bodies faster than you can find work for them to do. You burn on snacks, on massages, on the barista, on the slide between floors. You burn on consultants, mysterious expensive people who arrive, nod gravely at charts, and leave with suitcases of your money and a vague promise that things are going well. You burn on branded merchandise, thousands of t-shirts and water bottles and stress balls stamped with your logo, handed out at conferences to people who throw them away in the parking lot. The strangest part is how good it feels. Spending money you did not earn on things you do not need, toward a future you cannot quite describe, produces a warm chemical glow that is difficult to give up. Each purchase is a little hit of confidence, a physical proof that you are important, that the company is real, that the story is true. A frugal company looks scared. A company that spends freely looks certain, and looking certain is the entire game. And the money keeps arriving. That is the trap of it. Every time the fire burns low, you simply walk back into a glass tower, tell the story, draw the graph, and walk out with a fresh pile to feed the flames. The burn feels sustainable because it has always been sustainable, right up until the exact moment it is not. But that moment is nowhere in sight this month. This month the fire is roaring, the fish are swimming, the chairs are swivelling, and everyone agrees you are a genius. There is only one thing that burns money faster than a bloated payroll and a designer fish tank, and it is coming up on the calendar, glittering and pointless and wildly expensive. It is time to throw a party, and not just any party. It is time to celebrate absolutely nothing at all. To celebrate absolutely nothing in particular. Perhaps a software update, perhaps a Tuesday. You throw a party, because in this world a party is not a celebration, it is a strategy. You rent a warehouse, you hire a band far too famous for the occasion. There are ice sculptures dripping quietly in the corners, towers of shrimp no one will finish, and an open bar pouring drinks named after your product. People you have never met arrive to congratulate you on your success, which has not technically happened yet. The whole thing costs a fortune, generates precisely zero revenue, and is universally agreed to be a triumph. You leave early, genuinely exhausted from being congratulated. The excuse for the party barely matters. Perhaps you have launched a new feature. Perhaps you have hit some number that sounds impressive and means nothing. Perhaps it is simply that a rival threw a party last month and yours must be bigger, louder, and more expensive. Because in this world, a party is a press release you can dance inside of. So you rent the warehouse, a vast raw space in an unfashionable part of town, and you pour money into it until it becomes, for one single night, the most talked about room in the valley. The transformation is staggering. Lighting rigs descend from the ceiling. A dance floor materializes. There are ice sculptures carved into your company logo, already weeping gently under the lights, destined to become a cold puddle by midnight. There are towers of food no one will finish, mountains of shrimp on beds of crushed ice, cheeses flown in from countries you cannot locate on a map, a chocolate fountain that serves no nutritional or spiritual purpose beyond looking obscene. The open bar pours cocktails named after your product, a marketing idea someone had at 4 p.m, and no one had the heart to stop. The band is the masterpiece of excess. You have hired musicians far too famous for a corporate event that is technically celebrating a software update, and they know it, and they play anyway, because your money spends the same as anyone's. They perform to a crowd of tipsy engineers, opportunistic strangers, and journalists collecting free drinks, most of whom are not even watching, and it costs more than most people's homes, and you consider it money well spent. The guests are a mystery. You recognise perhaps 1 in 10. The rest are the ambient population of the boom, the hangers-on, the friends of friends, the people who somehow appear at every party like this one, congratulating everyone on everything. They find you in the crowd, shake your hand warmly, and tell you how well the company is doing, how visionary you are, how excited they are for what comes next. You have never met them. They do not work for you. They may not fully know what your company does, which puts them in excellent company, since neither, on a bad day, do you. And here is the quiet absurdity of it, standing there in your warehouse full of melting ice and famous musicians and strangers praising a success that exists only on paper. You're throwing a coronation for a king who has not yet won the war. You're celebrating in advance, loudly and expensively, daring the future to prove you wrong. It is superstition dressed as strategy, a bonfire of borrowed money lit to keep the darkness away. You slip out early, before the band finishes, exhausted in a way that surprises you. worn thin from smiling and shaking hands, and being told you are wonderful by people whose names you will never learn. The party roars on without you into the small hours, and it is declared, by everyone who mattered and everyone who did not, an enormous triumph. Now you simply need enough people to keep this whole glittering machine running, which means it is time to do the thing you have grown genuinely reckless about. It is time to hire. The company is growing so fast that you now hire people the way other people adopt stray cats, impulsively, emotionally, and without a clear plan for feeding them all. Titles are invented on the spot. Someone is a ninja, someone is a guru, someone is a wizard, which is apparently a real job here now. You hand out stock options like party favours, promising future riches to a receptionist who quietly does the math and realises she may soon be wealthier than her own landlord. Nobody's entirely sure what half these people do all day, including the people themselves. But the headcount climbs, and climbing feels like progress, so you keep right on hiring. The logic, if you can dignify it with the word, is that growth requires people, and so more people must mean more growth, a piece of reasoning that sounds airtight until you look at it directly. So you hire. You hire faster than you can furnish desks, which means new employees spend their first week sitting on the floor with a laptop, being paid handsomely to look for a chair. You hire faster than you can find work, which means whole teams exist in a pleasant fog, holding meetings about meetings, producing documents no one reads, all convinced that somewhere nearby the real work is happening. The job titles alone tell the story. Ordinary companies have managers and assistants and directors. You have a code ninja, a growth guru, a happiness engineer, and a man whose business card printed at company expense simply reads wizard. No one is quite sure what the wizard does. The wizard is not sure what the wizard does, but the wizard is paid and fed and given a beanbag and treated with the vague reverence owed to anyone whose function cannot be explained. Because in a company like this, mystery can easily be mistaken for value. The real currency, of course, is the stock options, and this is where the madness becomes almost poetic. You cannot always pay the enormous salaries the market demands, so instead you pay in dreams, in slices of the company itself, in options that will supposedly be worth a fortune once the great inevitable success arrives. You hand them out generously, to engineers, to designers, to the receptionist at the front desk, who smiles, takes the paperwork home, does some quiet arithmetic at her kitchen table, and realizes that if the story is true, if the balloon keeps rising, she will soon be richer than the man who owns her apartment building. Everyone becomes a shareholder, which means everyone becomes a believer, which is precisely the point. A person who owns a piece of the dream works harder to protect it, stays later, forgives more, ignores the small nagging voice asking how any of this makes money. You have not just hired employees. You have recruited disciples, hundreds of them, each one financially bound to the same beautiful gamble, each one now personally invested in never ever asking the question about the business plan. Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are essential, the quiet few actually building the thing that might one day justify all this noise. And some of them are the wizard, drawing a salary for reasons lost to history. But you cannot tell them apart anymore. Not in this crowd, not at this speed, and you have stopped trying. The head count is a number, and the number goes up, and up is the only direction anyone in this building believes in. You look out across the growing sea of desks, ninjas and gurus and wizards and believers, and you feel the warm pride of a man building something enormous. Now you simply have to lead them all to steer this swelling ship of dreamers somewhere profitable, and your particular method of leadership is, like everything else about you, deeply unconventional and delivered from very low to the ground. Let us talk about how you actually run this thing, a management style best described as enthusiastic guessing. You do not believe in offices, in hierarchies, in memos, or in wearing shoes indoors. You believe in energy. You call important meetings while sitting in a beanbag chair that slowly swallows you whole, forcing everyone to direct serious budget decisions toward a man gently sinking into the floor. You use words like synergy and disrupt and paradigm with the confidence of a preacher and the precision of a fog machine. Your employees adore you mostly and follow your vision faithfully, mostly because you are the one holding the checkbook, and the checkbook is very persuasive. You reject the old ways entirely. Offices with doors suggest hierarchy, and hierarchy is the enemy of energy, so you have torn down the walls, literally, into one vast open plain where everyone can see everyone and no one can concentrate on anything. You do not have a private office. You have a beanbag, a large slouching sack of foam beads positioned in the middle of the chaos, from which you conduct the affairs of a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, while slowly, inexorably sinking toward the carpet. The meetings are a wonder to behold. You gather your senior people, your ninjas and gurus, around the low altar of the beanbags, and you all lower yourselves down with varying degrees of dignity, executives in their 30s folding onto the floor like schoolchildren at story time. From this position, roughly level with everyone's ankles, you discuss quarterly spending, hiring plans, and the future of the enterprise. Someone tries to present a serious financial concern while lying at a 45-degree angle, gradually losing a battle with gravity, and it is impossible for anyone to take it fully seriously, which may be the point. Your vocabulary is its own management system. You have collected a glittering pile of words that sound profound and mean almost nothing, and you deploy them with total conviction. You want to leverage synergies. You want to disrupt the paradigm. You want to think outside the box, move the needle, boil the ocean, and circle back on the low-hanging fruit. Strung together, your sentences have the rhythm of wisdom and the substance of fog, and yet people nod. People write it down. People leave the beanbag summit genuinely inspired despite being unable to repeat a single actionable thing you said. And the strange truth is that it works, at least for now. At least like this. Because underneath the buzzwords and the foam beads, you do have something, a kind of relentless, contagious belief that infects everyone around you. You're not managing through spreadsheets or discipline or clear instructions. You're managing through sheer force of enthusiasm, a walking pep rally, a man so certain of the glorious future that his certainty becomes a kind of gravity, pulling everyone into orbit around your beanbag. It helps enormously that you sign the checks. It is easy to adore a visionary who is also personally making you richer with every stock option, whose vague, inspiring speeches are attached to a very real and rapidly growing pile of money. Loyalty flows freely when the checkbook is open, and yours is open constantly, gushing, so your people forgive the fog, embrace the beanbags, and follow you happily toward a horizon none of them can quite see. You heave yourself up from the beanbag at the end of the meeting, a dignified struggle that undoes some of the visionary mystique, and you feel like the captain of a very strange, very happy ship. And soon that ship is due to reach the single most magical moment in the entire voyage, the day the whole world agrees, all at once and for no clear reason, that you are worth an absolute fortune. And now the moment everything has been building toward, the day your company goes public and the entire universe agrees, all at once, to pretend you are worth a staggering amount of money. This is the initial public offering, the grandest magic trick in the whole show. You ring a bell, people clap, a number appears on a screen and immediately doubles, then doubles again, for no reason anyone can fully explain, and just like that you are a paper billionaire before lunch. You have still never turned a profit. You still could not confidently say what the company does. But the market has spoken loudly and with great enthusiasm, and the market says you are a genius. The days leading up to it are a blur of bankers, lawyers, and men in real suits who suddenly take you very seriously. There is a roadshow, a whirlwind tour of city after city, where you stand in hotel conference rooms and tell the story again. The graph, the platform, the revolution, to rooms full of investors who want in before the doors open. You're exhausted. You're exhilarated. You have told the story so many times that you have stopped hearing the words, and it no longer matters, because everyone has already decided to believe. Then comes the morning itself. You're on the trading floor, or a facsimile of it, surrounded by cameras and cheering employees and bankers whose smiles could power the building. There is a bell, an actual physical bell, and you're handed the honour of ringing it, and you do, and the sound marks the exact instant your private gamble becomes a public spectacle. The market opens. Your stock, priced modestly the night before by cautious men, is set loose into the wild, and the wild goes mad. The number on the screen, the price of a single share of your unprofitable dream, does not rise so much as erupt. It doubles in minutes. It keeps climbing, higher, faster, a green line rocketing upward with a velocity that has nothing to do with earnings, or revenue, or the boring gravity of a real business, and everything to do with pure, giddy, contagious want. People are buying because the price is going up, and the price is going up because people are buying, a perfect self-feeding loop of enthusiasm untethered from anything you could put in a ledger. You watch the screen, and somewhere in the blur of climbing digits you become a billionaire. Not in cash, not in anything you can hold, but in the strange new arithmetic of the boom. Your slice of the company is now worth more money than you can truly comprehend. A figure with so many zeros it stops feeling like money and starts feeling like weather. Your employees, your ninjas and gurus, and the wizard and the receptionist with her kitchen table math are watching the same screen, and they are becoming rich too, and the whole building erupts in a joy that is completely genuine and completely detached from reason. The cameras find you. Reporters shout questions, and you stand there, in your fleece vest, a man who could not tell you last week how the company earns $1, now anointed by the largest and most serious financial machinery in the world as a visionary, a titan, a genius. Nobody rang the bell to celebrate profit because there is none. They rang it to celebrate belief, and belief today is worth more than any factory or product or plan. It is the best day of your life, and it is entirely made of paper. Because the fortune that just landed on you is real in the way a rainbow is real, dazzling, undeniable, and impossible to actually pick up. And understanding exactly what that means, exactly how much of your new wealth you can genuinely touch, is a lesson you are about to learn, slowly and uncomfortably, in the quiet after the cheering stops. Here is the strange and slippery truth about your fortune. Almost none of it is real, or at least not real in the way that rent is real. You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars on paper, in stock, in a number that lives on a screen and changes its mind constantly. You cannot spend most of it. You cannot touch most of it. If you try to actually cash it all out, the whole delicate illusion might wobble and pop. So you are somehow one of the richest people in the country, and also a man who still feels a small, quiet thrill when a coffee turns out to be free. Your wealth is enormous, imaginary, and terrifyingly weightless, like a balloon you're holding by a very thin string. The number is genuinely staggering. When you multiply your shares by the price on the screen, you arrive at a figure that belongs in an encyclopedia, a fortune that would have made the tycoons of old choke on their cigars. On paper, you could buy anything. On paper, you're a titan. And that phrase, on paper, does more heavy lifting than anyone at your victory party wanted to admit, because paper is exactly what it is: a promise, a possibility, a number that only becomes money at the precise moment you try to turn it into money, and often not even then. You cannot simply cash it in. Your wealth is almost entirely your own stock, and the rules, and common sense, forbid you from selling much of it. There are lock-up periods, stretches of time when the founder is not allowed to sell a single share, because if the man who built the company started dumping his stock, the market would panic, and the price would collapse, and the whole beautiful illusion would deflate in an afternoon. So you sit atop this mountain of value, forbidden from touching it, a starving man in a locked pantry, richer than a small nation, and unable to freely spend a fraction of it. Worse, the number will not hold still. Your fortune breathes with the market, swelling and shrinking by the hour, tens of millions of dollars appearing and vanishing while you eat lunch. You check the screen and you're worth a little more. You check again and you're worth considerably less, a sum larger than most people earn in a lifetime, having simply evaporated between your soup and your sandwich, for reasons no one can explain, based on a rumour, a mood, a headline about interest rates you do not understand. Your wealth is not a possession. It is a weather system, and you live inside it, at its mercy. The result is a psychology so absurd it would be funny if it were happening to someone else. You are, by every headline, one of the wealthiest people in the country, and yet your day-to-day life is riddled with the small, frugal instincts of the not-quite rich. You still feel a warm flicker of victory when a coffee is complimentary. You still hesitate for half a second before paying for parking. Your bank account, the real one, the one with actual spendable money in it, is healthy but not mythical. Nothing like the number that follows your name in the newspaper. You're simultaneously a billionaire and a man counting the cash in his wallet, and both are entirely true. It is the great secret of the boom, whispered among founders who dare to be honest. The fortunes are real and not real at once, dazzling on the page and locked in the vault, 100 imaginary millions tied to a string you are terrified to let go of, and even more terrified to pull too hard. You are holding a balloon, and it is the most valuable balloon in the world, and its entire worth depends on the crowd continuing to believe it will float. And so, you do the only thing that makes the fear go away, the thing that turns the anxiety back into a thrill. You watch the number. You watch it constantly. You watch it in a way that is about to become a genuine and consuming problem. A new habit has quietly crept into your life, gentle at first, then all-consuming. You cannot stop checking the stock price. It is on your computer. It is on a little scrolling ticker. It is the first thing you look at in the morning and the last thing you see at night, glowing softly like a tiny financial nightlight. When it climbs, you feel invincible, brilliant, chosen. When it dips even slightly, your stomach drops and you begin quietly bargaining with the universe. You refresh the page. You refresh it again. Nothing has changed in the last 9 seconds, but you refresh it anyway, because somewhere along the way the number stopped measuring your company and started measuring your soul. It began innocently enough, a glance in the morning, a check at lunch, the healthy curiosity of a man watching his creation trade in the wild. But curiosity has a way of curdling into compulsion, and now the glance has become a stare, and the stare has become a state of being. Your computer has the price open in a window that never closes. You have it on a second screen, updating live. You have, somewhere on your desk, a small dedicated ticker device whose only job is to feed you the number in a slow hypnotic crawl, and you love it and hate it in exactly equal measure. The number owns you now, and it owns your moods with it. On a green morning, when the price ticks upward, you are magnificent. You walk taller. You're generous to the barista, warm to your ninjas, expansive in your beanbag summits, a benevolent genius blessing his kingdom, because the screen has confirmed once again that you are right about everything. The rising number is a drug, a pure hit of validation, and you chase the feeling all day, refreshing, watching the digits climb and feeling each small increase as personal proof of your own brilliance. But the market is a fickle god, and the red days come. The number dips, only slightly, a rounding error in the grand scheme, and your entire nervous system lurches. Your stomach drops the way it does on a falling elevator. You lean toward the screen. You start doing the private, shameful mathematics of the anxious rich, calculating exactly how many millions of imaginary dollars have just evaporated from your imaginary fortune, and it feels absurdly like a real and personal wound. You begin bargaining with no one in particular, promising the universe you will be good if only the line will turn green again. And then comes the refreshing, the true madness of it. You reload the page, nothing has changed. You reload it again, 9 seconds later. Still nothing. You know, intellectually, that staring at the number will not move it, that your attention has no effect on the market whatsoever, that a watch stock does not rise. And yet your finger keeps twitching toward the button, again and again, a nervous tick, a compulsion, a man trying to soothe himself by repeatedly checking a wound to see if it still hurts. It does. It always does. The worst part is what it has done to your sense of self. The number was supposed to measure the company, the cold external verdict of the market on your business. But somewhere along the way the wires crossed, and now it measures you, your worth, your intelligence, your very right to feel good about your life. On a green day you are a visionary. On a red day you are a fraud. Your mood, your ego, your entire sense of who you are now rises and falls with a jittery green line that has nothing to do with anything you did today, and you cannot look away from it. You tear your eyes from the screen finally, because you have somewhere to be, a decision to sign off on, another glorious way to spend money in pursuit of the very fame that keeps the number climbing. And this particular scheme is your most expensive idea yet, involving the biggest stage in the country and improbably a puppet. To become a true household name, you decide to do the most sensible thing imaginable with your investors' money. Buy the single most expensive advertisement on the entire planet. A Super Bowl commercial, watched by tens of millions, costing more than most people earn in a lifetime, all to promote a website that, once again, has never made a profit. And your big creative idea, your bold marketing masterpiece, is a puppet, a talking sock puppet. It is charming, it is memorable, it becomes wildly famous, and it sells almost nothing at all. But for one glorious season, everyone in the country knows your mascot, and knowing your mascot feels remarkably close to having a business model. The reasoning arrives in a beanbag meeting, wrapped in the usual fog. To win, you must be known. To be known, you must be everywhere. And the single most everywhere place in the entire country, the one screen the whole nation stares at on the same night, is the big game. So you will buy a slot, 30 seconds of the most valuable airtime in existence, a stretch of screen so expensive that the number makes even your hardened bankers wince. You sign off on it without blinking, because blinking is for companies with a burn rate they respect. Then comes the creative, the actual advertisement, and here your marketing gurus present their triumph. Not a demonstration of the product, not an explanation of what the company does, which would admittedly be difficult since no one is entirely sure. Instead, a mascot, a sock puppet, floppy and wide-eyed and inexplicably charming, who will speak directly to the nation and win its heart. You look at the puppet looks at you. and against every instinct a serious person should have, you fall completely in love, and you approve it on the spot. The advertisement airs, and for 30 glorious seconds the sock puppet dances across tens of millions of screens, cracking jokes, being adorable, becoming instantly and improbably a star. The nation is charmed. The puppet is a sensation. People quote it at work the next day. People want the puppet on merchandise, on television, at events. Your mascot has achieved a level of fame you can only dream of for yourself. Beloved from coast to coast, a genuine cultural phenomenon born from a sock and an obscene pile of your investors' money. There is only one small problem, a detail so minor it hardly seems worth mentioning at the victory lunch. The puppet, for all its fame, does not actually make anyone buy anything. People adore the mascot. People remember the mascot. People can perfectly recall the funny sock and its charming voice and its catchphrase. And then those same people do not visit the website, do not make a purchase, do not do the one single thing the enormously expensive commercial was supposed to make them do. You have bought fame, pure and dazzling, entirely divorced from sales, a nation of fans and almost no customers. But you cannot feel the problem yet, not in this warm season of glory. Fame feels like success. Recognition feels like winning. When strangers light up at the mention of your mascot, when the puppet appears on talk shows and magazine covers, it is intoxicatingly easy to mistake being known for being profitable, to believe that all this attention must surely somehow be converting into money in a way too complicated to trace. It is not. But the confusion is delicious, and you swim in it happily. The puppet in the end will outlive the company, remembered long after the business itself has faded into a cautionary footnote. But that is a joke history has not told yet. For now you have a famous mascot and a beloved brand, built on the unshakable belief at the heart of your whole empire, the belief that anything, absolutely anything, can and should be sold through a screen. The core belief holding up your entire empire is beautifully, dangerously simple. Anything can be sold online, and therefore everything should be. Pet food, furniture, groceries delivered by a fleet of vans you do not actually own yet. It does not matter that shipping a £50 bag of dog food across the country costs more than the dog food itself. It does not matter that the numbers, once someone finally writes them down, look like a quiet cry for help. What matters is the vision, the future, the glorious day when people buy their toothpaste from a screen. You're years too early and burning cash every step of the way, but you are certain, absolutely certain, that the world will catch up any minute now. The faith is total, and it is genuinely a faith, complete with profits, converts, and a promised land. You believe, in your bones, that the old way of buying things, the store, the shelf, the drive, the cart, is a doomed and clumsy relic, and that soon, very soon, all of it will move onto the screen. Every product, every category, everything a human being could ever want, ordered from a chair, delivered to a door, purchased through the glorious screeching magic of the internet. And you intend to be the one who sells it to them, all of it, whatever it is. So you sell everything. You launch categories with the reckless enthusiasm of a man who has never once looked at a shipping invoice. You will sell pet food, heavy and cheap and wildly unprofitable to mail across a continent. You will sell furniture, enormous and fragile and a logistical nightmare, boxed and trucked at a cost that dwarfs the price on the tag. You will sell groceries, promising fresh food delivered fast, a promise that requires warehouses, refrigeration, and a fleet of delivery vans you have confidently described to investors and do not, technically, own. The numbers, when anyone dares to write them down, are a horror show dressed as a strategy. You sell a bag of dog food for less than it cost you to buy it. then pay more than the whole sale to ship it, then celebrate the transaction as growth. Every order loses money. Every new customer is a fresh little wound in the ledger. And the more you sell, the more you lose. Faster and faster, a machine expertly engineered to turn $1 into 80 cents at tremendous scale, all of it cheered on as momentum. But you do not look at the numbers, and neither does anyone whose opinion you caught, because looking at the numbers would break the beautiful spell. Instead, you look at the graph, the users, the orders, the great climbing lines of activity, and you tell everyone truthfully that people are indeed buying things through the screen in growing numbers, that the behavior is real, that the future is arriving. You simply leave out the small detail that every single sale is bleeding you dry, because that is a footnote, a temporary inconvenience, a problem that vanishes the instant you get big enough, which you always will. And the maddening, almost tragic thing is that the vision is correct. You're not wrong about the future. People will, one day, buy their pet food and their furniture and their groceries and their toothpaste from a screen, in quantities that would make even you dizzy. You've seen it clearly, this whole glittering world to come. You've simply arrived a decade too early, at the wrong speed, down a phone line that dies when someone orders lunch, burning money to prove a point the world is not yet ready to reward. Still, being right, even too early, feels wonderful, and being early feels like being a pioneer rather than a cautionary tale. The press certainly thinks so, because while your ledgers weep in the dark, the magazines have decided that you are not a reckless spender at all. They have decided that you are a genius, and they are about to put your face on the cover to prove it. Fame arrives, and it arrives in glossy form. Magazines want you. They put your face on the cover, arms crossed, chin lifted, staring boldly into a future only you can apparently see, beneath a headline calling you a visionary, a wonder, the person who will change everything. You give interviews. You share your philosophy on innovation, on failure, on the importance of thinking differently, and reporters write it all down as though you have personally discovered fire. You start to believe it, just a little, and then quite a lot. After all, if the smartest magazines in the country say you are a genius, who are you to argue? The cover hangs framed on your office wall. You look at it more often than you would ever admit. The photo shoot alone should have been a warning. They bring in a professional, an actual celebrity photographer, who arranges the lighting for an hour to make you look less like a tired man in a fleece vest, and more like a prophet who has glimpsed the far side of history. They tell you to cross your arms. They tell you to look off into the middle distance, thoughtful, unbothered, gazing at something the rest of us cannot see. You hold the pose, you feel slightly ridiculous. And then the magazine comes out, and you look undeniably magnificent, and the ridiculousness evaporates, replaced by a warm and dangerous glow. The headline is the truly intoxicating part. They do not call you a young man who spends investor money on sock puppets. They call you a visionary. They call you the future of business, the mind reshaping how the world will live, the genius at the center of the revolution. They print your vaguest opinions as though they were carved on tablets. Your beanbag buzzwords, synergy and disruption and paradigm, appear in careful, serious print, elevated from fog into philosophy, simply because a respected publication decided to write them down. The interviews multiply, and you grow fluent in the particular language of the celebrated founder. You speak about failure as though it were a beloved teacher rather than a thing you have mostly avoided by spending other people's money. You speak about thinking differently, about ignoring the doubters, about how the greatest ideas always sound crazy at first, which conveniently reframes every warning sign as further proof of your brilliance. Reporters nod, reporters transcribe, reporters go home and write pieces that make you sound like a cross between an inventor and a saint. And slowly, page by page, cover by cover, you begin to believe it. This is the quiet trap of the whole thing, the one no amount of money can protect you from. You know, somewhere deep down, that the company loses money on every bag of dog food, that the plan is missing, that the fortune is paper, and the puppet sells nothing. But the magazines are so confident, so glossy, so authoritative, and they are all saying the same magnificent thing about you. And it is simply easier and far more pleasant to believe the flattering strangers than the nagging voice inside, so you do. You have the cover framed. You hang it on the wall of your office, where you can see it from your beanbag, and you tell visitors it was no big deal, a nice little bit of press, while privately you look at it a dozen times a day. There you are, arms crossed, gazing into the future, anointed a genius by people who never once asked how the business makes money. It is the most flattering mirror ever built, and you cannot stop staring into it. The trouble with being crowned a genius by the press is that you begin to act like one, spending and expanding and believing with a confidence that no longer has any brakes. And a genius obviously cannot be expected to fly with ordinary people. A genius needs to rise above all that, literally, which is how you come to find yourself standing on a runway, keys in hand, about to make one of the most gloriously unnecessary purchases of your entire life. Every so often a man must relax, and when that man is you, relaxing means chartering a private jet somewhere warm, for reasons that begin as business and quietly curdle into nonsense. You bring your laptop. You do not open it. You lie on a beach that costs more per night than a small house, sipping something expensive, calling it a working retreat while working precisely none. Your phone still buzzes. The stock price still haunts you. You have escaped to paradise and simply brought all the anxiety along as carry-on. But the sunset is lovely. The sand is warm, and for a few hours you almost manage to forget that everything you own is made entirely of confidence and promises. The jet is the purest expression of your new station, and it seduces you the moment you first step aboard. No lines, no crowds, no sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers eating egg sandwiches at the gate. You simply drive onto the runway, walk up a small set of stairs, and sink into a leather seat wide enough to sleep in, while a smiling attendant offers you a drink before the door is even closed. It is travel with all the friction sanded off, and once you have felt it, ordinary flight becomes unthinkable, a humiliation you will pay almost anything to avoid. You tell yourself the trip is work and you half believe it. There is a conference, perhaps, or a meeting you could technically take from a beach, and that thin justification is enough to file the whole extravagant thing under business and let the company absorb the cost. You pack the laptop with genuine intentions. You will review the numbers. You will answer the emails. You will emerge from this trip refreshed, and also somehow more productive, a visionary who works from paradise. The laptop stays closed the entire time. It is a very expensive paperweight with a sunburn. Paradise itself is staggering, a resort so exclusive its name is a rumour, where the sand is combed and the water is the colour of a jewel, and the staff learn your preferences before you voice them. You lie on a lounger under a sky so blue it looks fake, a cold drink sweating gently in your hand, the ocean whispering exactly the sounds the meditation tapes promised. By every visible measure, you've arrived at the summit of human comfort, the exact place all the money was supposed to take you. And yet you cannot relax, not really, not for more than a few minutes at a stretch, because you brought the anxiety with you, tucked into your carry-on right beside the sunscreen. The phone still buzzes, the pager still pulses, and worst of all, you can still check the stock price right here on this perfect beach, and so, of course, you do. You lie in paradise refreshing a number, your stomach lurching with every dip, the green line reaching all the way across the ocean to keep its grip on your mood. The tragedy, small and self-inflicted, is that you have purchased the finest escape money can buy and then refuse to actually escape. You are physically in heaven and mentally still hunched over your desk, watching the wound, doing the anxious math. The sunset arrives, genuinely spectacular, painting the whole sky in colours that should stop any reasonable heart, and for one clean unguarded moment you look up from the screen and simply see it, and it is beautiful, and you feel almost at peace. Then the phone buzzes, and the moment closes, and you're back inside the machine. You fly home rested in body and frayed in spirit, and you decide, as men like you always do, that the problem was not the anxiety but the destination. What you need, clearly, is more places to escape to, which is how you begin buying homes you will almost certainly never sleep in. One mansion, it turns out, is not nearly enough, though no one can tell you exactly why, so you buy another. A place in the mountains for the skiing you do not do, a place by the ocean for the relaxing you cannot manage, an apartment in the city for the nights you're simply too tired to drive home to any of your other homes. Most of them sit empty, dusted quietly by staff you've never met, waiting for visits that rarely come. You own more bedrooms than you could sleep in across an entire year. You're collecting houses the way a child collects marbles, not to use them, just to have them, and to know dimly that you can. It starts, as these things do, with a reasonable-sounding idea. You're tired of hotels, even the good ones, and it occurs to you that a man of your means should simply own a place in the mountains, somewhere to retreat when the pressure builds. So you buy one, a sprawling timber lodge with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the peaks, and you spend 2 nights there, total, in the first year, both of which you spend indoors, on the phone, ignoring the mountains entirely. But the appetite, once fed, does not shrink. The ocean calls next, and reason follows obediently behind. You need somewhere by the sea, of course you do, a place to truly unwind, and so you acquire a glass and concrete marvel perched above the waves, with an infinity pool that spills toward the horizon, and a wine cellar you will never open. It is breathtaking. It is enormous. It is for 360-something days a year, completely empty, tended by a staff who keep it flawless for a man who almost never comes. Then the city apartment, justified by the simplest and most absurd logic of all. Sometimes you're too tired, after a late night in town, to drive the 20 minutes back to your main mansion, and so, naturally, you purchase a penthouse to sleep in on those nights, a home whose entire purpose is to save your short drive to your other home. You have now solved a problem that did not exist, at staggering expense, and you feel, briefly, extremely clever for having done so. The homes accumulate, and with them an invisible army of people you employ and never see. There are housekeepers dusting rooms you have not entered in months, gardeners tending grounds you have never walked, caretakers keeping the heat on, and the pipes clear in houses that stand dark and silent night after night. You are the ghost these homes are haunted by, an owner glimpsed once a season, a signature on the payroll, a man whose beds are made daily for a body that is almost always somewhere else. If you added them up, and you never do, you own more bedrooms than there are nights you could possibly use them. A portfolio of empty rooms scattered across mountains and coasts and city skylines. You do not visit them because you cannot rest anyway, and you cannot rest anyway because the anxiety follows you everywhere, and so each new house solves nothing and simply becomes one more beautiful place you fail to relax in. But you keep buying, because the buying is the point. Each purchase is not really about the house. It is about the feeling, the proof, the quiet reassurance that you have arrived, that you can, that a boy who once shared a cramped apartment now owns coastlines and mountain tops. The houses are trophies, not homes, and you collect them the way you collect everything now, hungrily, restlessly, in search of a satisfaction that keeps moving one purchase further away. And when the house is not enough, you fill them, floor to ceiling, with gadgets. Naturally, being a person of the future, you fill your home with technology decades ahead of its time and roughly half as functional. Lights that dim by voice command, as long as you say the command perfectly twice, while standing very still. A refrigerator that connects to the internet for a reason no one has ever successfully explained. A home theatre with more remote controls than a spaceship, so complex that watching a single film requires a printed instruction sheet and a small prayer. When it works, it feels like pure magic. When it does not, which is often, you stand in your own multi-million-dollar house, unable to turn on a lamp, quietly wondering whether the future is entirely on your side. You could not resist, of course. You're a man of the future, a magazine-certified visionary, and it would be embarrassing to live in a house that switches its lights on the way a peasant does, with a finger and a wall. So you had the whole place wired at tremendous cost by earnest young men who promised you a home that would think, anticipate, and obey. A house from tomorrow, a house that would make guests gasp. You signed the enormous invoice with the confident flourish of a man buying his way into the century ahead. The lights are the first betrayal. They respond to your voice, in theory, dimming and brightening at your spoken command, which sounds miraculous until you actually try it. You must say the phrase exactly, in the right tone, at the right volume, ideally while standing in the right spot and not moving. And even then the system considers your request for a long thoughtful moment before either obeying or, with equal likelihood, plunging a different room entirely into darkness. You've stood in your own living room, repeating a command to a ceiling, negotiating with your house like a hostage, while a simple switch waited unused on the wall behind you. The refrigerator connects to the internet, a sentence that impressed everyone at the party and has never once impressed a single meal. No one, including its designers, can fully explain what a connected refrigerator is meant to do, and yours mostly does the same thing all refrigerators do, plus occasionally displaying a cryptic error message about a software update. It is a very cold, very expensive box that keeps your beige diet shakes chilled while quietly boasting to no one that it is online. The home theatre is the masterpiece of the whole overreaching enterprise, a plush dark room built for cinematic bliss and rendered nearly unusable by its own sophistication. There are remote controls for everything, a small pile of them, each governing a different component, and to watch a single film you must operate them in the correct sequence, like defusing a bomb. There is, no exaggeration, a printed instruction sheet on the side table, laminated, prepared by your staff, explaining how to make the room show a movie. Guests assume it is a joke. It is not a joke. So there you are, on a quiet evening, alone in one of your several enormous homes, wanting nothing more than to dim the lights and watch something forgettable, and finding yourself entirely defeated by your own future. The lights ignore you. The theatre demands the laminated ritual. The refrigerator hums smugly, connected to a world that does not care. You stand in the dark of a house that cost a fortune and cannot, at this moment, produce light, and the irony lands with a soft, cruel weight. When the technology works, on its good days, it genuinely does feel like magic, a glimpse of a smoother, softer world to come. But its good days are rare, and its bad days leave you fumbling for a switch in your own palace, the great visionary undone by a lamp. Still, you never doubt the future itself, only its timing, and you carry that same reckless faith straight into your next great pastime, which is handing money to other people's terrible ideas. With money pouring in faster than sense, you begin investing in other people's dreams, and your judgment, let us be gentle, takes a long holiday. You put money into a website that delivers ice cream by mail. You back a gadget that does something no one on earth ever asked for. You're shown a plan so obviously doomed that a child could spot the flaw, and you write the check anyway, because passing on the next big thing is the one fear that keeps you awake at night. Some of these bets are merely bad. Some are historically, spectacularly disastrous. But each one feels, in the moment, like the smart play, and smart is the only thing you're truly addicted to. It happens gradually. Once you are known as a man with money and vision, the dreamers come to you, an endless procession of eager founders with graphs of their own, each convinced they hold the next great idea, each hoping you will bless their venture with a slice of your fortune. And you, flattered, restless, and flush with paper millions, begin to say yes. You become an investor, a backer, a wise elder of the boom, dispensing money to the young the way it was once dispensed to you, on the strength of a story and a feeling. The trouble is that your judgment, never especially rigorous, has now been thoroughly ruined by your own success. You built an unprofitable company into a paper fortune on nothing but belief, and so belief is the only tool you trust. When a founder tells you people will buy ice cream through the mail, that it will arrive frozen and perfect and change dessert forever, you do not ask about the melting, or the shipping cost, or the obvious and fatal problem at the heart of it. You nod. You recognize the energy. You write the check, because the energy is familiar, and the energy, in your experience, becomes money. So the ice cream company gets your money and melts, predictably, into a warm, sweet disaster on doorsteps across the country. The gadget company gets your money, a device that solves a problem no living person has ever had, and sells almost none. A parade of doomed ventures gets your money, each one obvious in hindsight, each one flawed in a way that a calmer, poorer, less flattered man would have spotted in an instant. But you are none of those things, and so the checks keep flowing. What drives you is not greed, exactly, but a very specific and modern terror, the fear of missing out. Every ridiculous idea might be the next enormous thing, and the one bet you decline could be the one that makes some other investor a legend. You've seen it happen. You have watched fortunes bloom from ideas that sounded insane, including, uncomfortably, your own. So you cannot say no, because no feels like cowardice, like blindness, like being the fool who passed on the future, and that is the one role you cannot bear to play. And so you say yes, again and again, to the merely bad and the spectacularly doomed alike, spreading your paper fortune across a field of dreams, most of which will wither within the year. You call it a portfolio. You call it vision. You tell yourself that a few big winners will cover the many losses, which is the exact same math that keeps your own leaking company aloft, and you find the symmetry reassuring rather than alarming. The bets that fail, and most of them fail, sting less than you would expect, because the money still does not feel entirely real, and because there is always another founder at the door with another story. But there is one rivalry that stings in a way money cannot soothe, one competitor whose every success lands like a personal insult, and thinking of him ruins an otherwise perfectly good afternoon. Every hero needs a nemesis, and yours is another founder, roughly your age, roughly your wealth, and roughly twice as annoying. He runs a competing company with a similar idea and a smugger haircut. You track his every move. You bristle when the magazines call him the visionary, that word, your word. You compete over office size, over party guest lists, over whose stock climbed higher this quarter, over absolutely everything except, notably, actual profit, which neither of you has ever produced. It is a rivalry built on ego, fueled by money that is not real, fought between two men who dress like they're heading out camping. and you would sooner burn a fortune than let him win. You cannot remember exactly when it started, only that he has been there, at the edge of your success, for as long as you have been successful. His company does more or less what yours does, launched around the same time, chasing the same customers, telling the same story to the same investors. In another life you might have been friends, two young men who caught the same impossible wave. In this life, he is your mirror and your torment, proof that you are not singular, and you loathe him with a passion you reserve for no one else. You track him obsessively. You read every article about him, especially the flattering ones which ruin your entire day. You know his stock price nearly as well as your own, and you check it almost as often, cheering its dips with a bitterness that would embarrass you if you ever said it aloud. You know who attended his last party, and whether it was bigger than yours, and whether the band was more famous. You have opinions about his office, his haircut, his catchphrases, his fleece vest, which is somehow worse than your fleece vest in ways you could describe at length. The competition plays out in the most gloriously pointless arenas. You lease a bigger floor because you heard he leased a big floor. You throw a more expensive party because his was written up somewhere. You chase the same magazine covers, and when they call him the visionary of the industry, your word, your entire identity, you feel it like a theft, a genuine wound, an outrage that keeps you up at night composing rebuttals no one will ever read. You're two men racing each other toward a cliff, and the only thing that matters is arriving first. And here is the joke sitting at the very centre of it, plain to everyone but the two of you. Neither of your companies makes any money. You are locked in a furious, all-consuming battle for supremacy in a contest whose ultimate prize does not exist, each of you burning real fortunes to prove you are the greater genius, while the actual scoreboard, the boring one, the one that measures whether a business earns more than it spends, reads 0 to 0. You're fighting over the crown of a kingdom that is quietly running out of money, but you cannot see it that way. Not while the game is still on, not while the magazines are still watching and the stock is still climbing and the party still raw. In the fever of the boom, beating him feels like the entire point, the true measure of your worth, more important than profit, more important than sense, more important, on the worst days, than the health of your own company. Ego has replaced arithmetic as the thing you're actually building. The rivalry costs you more than money, though. It costs you sleep, focus, peace, whole nights and weekends surrendered to a competition that exists mostly in your own head. And that relentless, grinding drive to win at any price is about to collect its bill in the one currency you've been quietly overspending all along, which is yourself. Beneath all the wealth and the toys runs a quieter, stranger truth. You're exhausted in a way that money cannot fix. You wear your lack of sleep like a medal. You brag about working 100-hour weeks, about living on caffeine and adrenaline, about the cot in your office where you collapse for a few hours before the sun and the phone drag you back up again. Rest is for people without vision, you tell yourself. But your hands shake a little around the coffee. Your thoughts blur at the edges. You're richer than you ever dreamed and more tired than you have ever been, running on fumes toward a finish line that keeps politely moving further away. It didn't happen all at once. It crept in, the way the stock checking crept in, one late night becoming a habit, one skipped weekend becoming a lifestyle. Somewhere along the way you decided that sleep was a weakness, a luxury for lesser men, a slow leak in the tank of your ambition, and you began to treat it as an enemy to be defeated rather than a need to be met. You are proud of this. You brag about it. You tell interviewers about your 100-hour weeks the way a soldier describes a scar. The cot is the centerpiece of the whole exhausting performance. You keep one in your office tucked behind a screen, and you sleep there more often than you sleep in any of your several enormous, empty, immaculate homes. You collapse onto it in the small hours, still in your clothes, and you wake a few hours later when the phone buzzes or the sun leaks through the blinds, or the anxiety simply refuses to let you rest any longer. It is a strange kind of wealth. A man with mansions on 3 coasts choosing to sleep on a cot beside his desk. But you call it dedication, and everyone agrees. You run on stimulants now, and you have stopped pretending otherwise. Coffee, endless coffee, cup after cup, plus whatever else keeps the engine turning, and the result is a jittery, wired, permanently accelerated version of yourself that mistakes agitation for energy. Your hands have developed a faint tremor you notice when you lift the mug. Your thoughts move fast but slip through your fingers, ideas half-formed, sentences trailing off, the fog of your beanbag speeches now creeping into your actual mind. You're not sharp. You're merely fast, which is not the same thing, though it feels similar at 3 a.m. The exhaustion has a cost you cannot quite tally, because the tired mind is the last to notice its own dulling. You make decisions worse than you used to, though you feel more decisive. You miss things. You snap at people you would once have charmed. The relentless pace that was supposed to build the company has started quietly to erode the one person the company cannot run without, and you are too depleted to see it, mistaking your own slow unravelling for the price of greatness. And underneath it all sits the cruelest part, the finish line that will not hold still. You tell yourself you are working this hard to reach a point of rest, a summit where the struggle ends and you can finally exhale, but every time you near it, it slides further off. Bigger, you keep saying, just a little bigger, just past the next milestone, the next funding round, the next quarter of beating your rival, and then you will rest. You never rest. The goal is a horizon, and horizons do not let you arrive. You're wealthier than the boy you could have imagined, and more depleted than he ever was in his poorest, most frightened days. Money bought the mansions and the jets and the gleaming cars, and it could not buy you a single good night's sleep. And in this hollowed-out, over-caffeinated state, you attempt something money makes uniquely difficult, something that requires a rested heart you no longer have. You try to let someone in. Romance becomes complicated when you can no longer tell whether someone likes you or your net worth, and the honest truth is that neither can they. Suddenly you're very charming, very interesting, and apparently very tall to people who would not have glanced at you 2 years ago. You take dates to restaurants where the menu has no prices, which is its own quiet kind of warning. You talk about your company, because somewhere along the way you forgot how to talk about anything else. And late at night, alone in one of your several empty mansions, a small honest part of you wonders whether the affection is real or simply another investment, betting on you the way everyone else has, hoping for a return. You didn't used to be charming. You remember this clearly because it was not very long ago. 2 years back you were an awkward young man with a strange idea and an empty wallet, and the world was not lining up to admire you. Now somehow you are magnetic. You walk into a room and people turn. You tell a mediocre joke and it lands like genius. You have, according to several new acquaintances, become witty, fascinating, and even taller, a physical transformation that no diet shake could explain but a fortune apparently can. The dates themselves have a strange, weightless quality. You take people to restaurants so exclusive the menu arrives without prices, a detail meant to signal that cost is beneath discussion, and which you find quietly ominous, a room full of dishes whose value has been deliberately hidden. You order things you cannot pronounce. You are treated everywhere you go like something precious, and you can never fully tell whether the warmth is for you or for the reputation that walks in ahead of you like a herald. You are also, it must be said, terrible company now, though no one has the heart to tell you. You have forgotten how to talk about anything other than the company. Across candlelit tables, Over food that costs a fortune, you hold forth about your platform, your vision, your rivalry, your stock, while your date nods and smiles and slowly realizes that there is very little room in your life for another person, because the entire space is already occupied by the business. You have become a man with only one subject, and the subject is himself. The doubt is the worst part, the small corrosive question you cannot silence. When someone laughs at your jokes, admires your mind, gazes at you across the priceless menu, a cold voice in the back of your head asks whether any of it is for you, or whether you have simply become the most promising investment in the room. You cannot know. You genuinely cannot tell the difference anymore, and the terrible thing is that the people across the table often cannot either. Their own feelings tangled up in the glow of your success until affection and opportunity blur into the same warm light. So you retreat, each night, to one of your enormous silent houses, and the contrast could not be sharper. All that attention, all that warmth, all that admiration, and then a set of empty rooms and a maid bed, and a quiet so total you can hear the expensive refrigerator humming to itself downstairs. You have never been more surrounded by people who want to be near you. You have never felt more alone, and you're too tired and too guarded to tell whether that is the world's fault or your own. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. That connection is a problem for later, after the company wins, after you finally reach that finish line that keeps sliding away. There will be time for real things then, you promise yourself, once everything is secure. But security, it turns out, was never as solid as it looked, and the first faint crack in the whole shining edifice is about to appear, so quietly that you almost miss it. Something in the air has shifted, so subtly at first that you almost miss it. A reporter asks a question that is not adoring but skeptical, the word profit hanging in the room like a bad smell. An investor who used to gush now taps his pen and asks quietly when exactly the money is coming. The stock wobbles, then wobbles again, and does not fully recover. Companies like yours, once golden, begin whispering about layoffs. You reassure everyone loudly that this is a blip, a correction, a brief moment of weakness before the inevitable climb. But that little voice in your head, the one that always asks what the company actually does, has started asking a great deal louder. The first sign is a question, and it comes from a reporter, one of the same species that has spent years anointing you a genius on glossy covers. But this one does not lean forward with admiration. This one leans back, taps a pen, and asks almost gently, when your company expects to actually turn a profit. The word lands in the room like a bad smell, and for a moment you have no polished answer, only the old fog, the platform, the vision, the growth, and you can see for the first time that the fog is no longer working. Then the investors change their tune. The same men who once begged to hand you money, who thanked you for the privilege of setting their cash alight, now schedule meetings with a different energy. They do not gush. They ask hard, boring arithmetical questions, the very questions everyone spent years agreeing not to ask. When exactly does the burn stop? Where precisely does the profit come from? They tap their pens and wait for answers, and your beautiful graphs, the ones with no numbers, suddenly look less like vision and more like an evasion, which is what they always were. The stock feels it before anyone says it aloud. That green line, your obsession, your mood ring, your measure of your own soul, begins to wobble. It dips, and instead of springing back the way it always has, it hovers, uncertain, then dips again. You refresh the page and refresh it, and the old magic does not return. The number that only ever climbed has learned how to fall, and each small decline sends a chill through you that no amount of reassuring self-talk can fully warm. Around you, the whole glittering ecosystem starts to shift its weight. companies like yours, the golden children of the boom, begin whispering words that were unthinkable a season ago. Layoffs, cutbacks, runway. Founders who last year were buying jets are quietly, nervously, counting the months of cash they have left. The parties are fewer. The venture money, once a river, has become a trickle, and the men who control it have remembered all at once that they prefer businesses that make money to stories that merely sound like they will. You do what you have always done. You reassure. Loudly, confidently, in every room you insist that this is nothing, a blip, a correction, a temporary wobble before the inevitable resumption of the climb. You give the speech about doubters, about how the greatest ideas always face skepticism before they triumph, the speech that once thrilled the magazines. You say it to your employees, to your investors, to the press, and most of all to yourself, and you almost believe it, because believing it is the only thing you know how to do. But underneath the confident performance, the little voice has grown loud, the one that has been asking the same quiet question since that very first red light on the drive to work. What does the company actually do? How does it make money? It used to be a whisper you could ignore. Now it is nearly a shout, and for the first time you do not have a reassuring answer, not even for yourself. You tell everyone the storm will pass. You're about to learn how wrong you are. So how was your day at the top of the world? You woke in a mansion you barely knew, drank a glass of expensive dust, drove a car you could not fully operate to a building full of foosball and free cereal, and told a room of serious men that a screeching phone line was the future of everything. You burned money you never earned, threw parties for no reason, hired a wizard, bought houses you never slept in, and watched a sock puppet become more famous than you. You became a paper billionaire before lunch, and in the end watched it all turn back into the story it always was. It was absurd and it was reckless, and it was also, in its strange way, beautiful. Because beneath all the sludge and the sandals and the fish tanks was something genuinely human. The willingness to look at a slow grey image of a golden retriever loading one line at a time and believe, with your whole heart, that it would change the world. You were early, you were foolish, and you were, about almost everything that mattered, quietly right. The future those dreamers chased so clumsily did arrive, built by others on the wreckage of their hope. And tonight, as you lie in bed and the whole world hums along quietly at your fingertips, everything they promised and could not deliver simply working, effortless and instant. Maybe spare a small warm thought for the ridiculous hopeful men in the fleece vests who believed in it far too soon. They burned bright, they burned fast, and they lit the way anyway. So rest now. Breathe slow. The future is here, it is gentle, and it is yours. Good night.